So we'll jump straight in, ma'am. Can you walk us through the journey from Babita Puniya to Nitisha so that our listeners know what women in the army have gone through to get permanent commission?
Yeah, I mean, I entered this matter only at the stage of Nitisha, but it was rather sad, actually, if I may say so, to see the struggle that these women went through just to get a permanent commission in the army.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Justify. From the battlefront to the courtroom, the fight for gender equality in the Indian Army has been as much about shifting mindsets as it is about changing law. But this struggle is not purely domestic, it also situates India within the broader currents of international law and practice. Globally, states are being held to their commitments under the CEDAW and several other treaties in relation to their obligations for women. In India, as far as the journey of women in the army is concerned, it's been quite a long journey. From short service commissions to more permanent pathways, from the case of Babita Puniya to the more recent case of Lieutenant Colonel Nitisha, there has been quite a few ups and downs in this journey. Today, we are joined by the best person who can take us through the journey or the legal journey of women in the army, Senior Advocate Meenakshi Arora, who represented the petitioners in Nitisha. And with her, we will explore the constitutional, institutional, and human dimensions of this complex issue. Ma'am, it's a pleasure to have you on Justify.
It's a pleasure to be here.
As all of you know, Ms. Arora needs no introduction. She is a senior advocate in the Supreme Court of India and a leading constitutional lawyer with decades of experience. She has been at the forefront of landmark cases of gender justice, most certainly, but several other areas of law. As I said, she represented the petitioners in Nitisha versus Union of India, which recognized systemic and indirect discrimination in the Army's evaluation criteria for the Permanent Commission. She also helped draft the 2013 Supreme Court regulations on gender sensitization and sexual harassment for women lawyers. She has contributed significantly to advancing equality jurisprudence in India, not just relating to women's rights. So we'll jump straight in, ma'am. Can you walk us through the journey from Babita Puniya to Nitisha so that our listeners know what women in the army have gone through to get permanent commission?
Yeah, I mean, I entered this matter only at the stage of Nitisha, but it was rather sad, actually, if I may say so, to see the struggle that these women went through just to get a permanent commission in the army. Now, sometime in the year 92, 93, the government came out with this representation for recruiting women in at least in the five divisions of the army. That's like corps of signals or intelligence, etc., etc. And they were taken in with some kind of a representation that they would be given a permanent commission. Now, when they get taken in into the army, first at the end of the 5 years, then it is extended further for 5 years. These are all short service commissioned officers. So they are not going to get a permanent commission. They do not get many advantages. They can never lead a command or do a criteria, that kind of a stuff. So there is no advancement of career. Now, when something, you'll be surprised. Our face of the army for women, that is Sophia Qureshi, who did the Operation Sindoor reporting, was amongst these recruits and was a part of this Babita Punya group. I mean, I was also very pleasantly
That's
surprised.
really a fascinating tidbit because if I may share the reason as to why we are also doing this episode is
Yes.
because with Qureshi and Wing Commander Singh, there was a renewed focus of
Yeah.
how important it is to have women in the army. And so we thought that let us get to their
It is
journey.
exceedingly,
Wonderful tidbit that you shared with us.
yeah, it is exceedingly important to have women in the army. I mean, I would have my different reasons for that. But just going into this background, so these women then approached the High Court. Now, they filed their petition in the year 2003. Now, this is which I think the system is slow, and there is a resistance there because everything is taken as adversarial. It's not taken as something that should have been worked out at even in that stage. So when they approached the High Court in 2003, the High Court delivers its judgment in 2010. They had asked for permanent commission across board in the army in various areas where they were working, which was, like I said, corps of engineers, electrical and mechanical, then they were in signals, etc. But before the High Court, a plea was taken that, sorry, we have a policy decision. We can't take you any kind of an operational commands, etc. So in two areas of the army, which was, I think, the JAG and the signal, the court said grant them the permanent commission, but for the other areas, that was not granted, primarily on the ground that it's a policy decision taken by the army that these women will have to go into the operations or in the front, and therefore we can't have women there. But so far as the Air Force is concerned, they did direct their women to be granted permanent commission. But then we are concentrating just now on Babita Punya and this
So that's
course.
an interesting point, just to
Yeah,
clarify. So the
yeah,
Air Force came forward and said that they are willing to
yes,
grant permanent commissions.
yes.
The army did not at that
Army
point
did
in
not.
time.
Yes.
And even though they allowed it for certain kinds of
Only for two
only for two,
two.
but
That
the
is
ones
the
they
JAG,
didn't,
as you know, is that.
JAG has nothing to do with this. I mean, it's basically a
But
lawyer in the
in
army.
JAG, they can be called to the front when the need
That's
arises.
right. So that is the point
Yeah.
that I was coming to, that even the ones that they did not grant it, it is not as if they were actual combat roles. They were
No.
roles where they could be called, but that argument could be true for JAG as well. It could be true for any other kind of unit as well.
Yeah, so therefore, but categories such as intelligence corps or electrical and mechanical engineers or artillery, etc., they would have to be in the front if they should be a need be. Now, I mean, it will not be right to make a statement otherwise. They would need to be because those engineering forces, I know from some of my other matters, they move with the troops because the troops can require that assistance. So, be that as it may, the only ground that was taken was on the policy. Now, this matter traveled to Supreme Court in 2010. The date lines are very, very significant to understand this. As you know, the judgment is of 2020. The matter was pending in the Supreme Court for 10 long years. I think it is sometime in 2017 or around so, where the government then came before the Supreme Court and said, well, we can consider, the PC. But it wasn't so easy, because when they decided that they would consider them for PC, they came out with these classifications. They said those who are under 14 years as of date, we will consider them for PC. Those who are between 14, above 14 years, they can go up to 20 years and they will be given their pension. So we'll give them an opportunity to work up till 20 years and retire at a pensionable stage. Now, those who were beyond 14 years, for them, it was like, okay, we'll give you the pension and you may just go home. That can you imagine for someone who's put in that service, gone there, men are working, men who were equal with you will continue till whatever age of retirement unless you become medically unfit or something. But here are women who 14 years, no permanent commission, work out till 20 years, we'll give you the monetary benefit, but we won't allow you an entry. This is
So
what the
what caused
government's.
this? So this seems like a straight up case of discrimination on grounds of sex. So I'm curious to understand that what was the delay on account of even beyond 2017? Why did it take so long?
So it went back and forth. And the court came down with a very specific thing. They said, look here, 2010, you came to this court. We didn't grant you any stay. All that we did was we said no contempt to proceed. You didn't have a stay. Between filing of a petition in 2013, 2010 judgment, and between 2010 to 2020 or even 2017, many women who would have been otherwise eligible had now crossed the 14 years of service. And, it would be really bad to deny them this particular uh, permanent commission. So clearly, as you said, the Supreme Court saw through that discriminatory act of making up classifications, granting some, not granting the others, etc. And then it issued the guidelines. It said everyone who wants to, subject to whatever your fitments may be, will be granted that. Those who do not, they can be given the options to opt out. That is what you will find in the operative directions in Babita Puniya. So effectively, women were granted permanent commission under Babita Puniya and they were entitled to join. Now thereafter comes the Nishita. Nishita, Babita Puniya is a discrimination up to this point. First of all, we may have taken you in, but we don't have a policy to take women, and we don't recognize women as the face in the army or to work with men, or women are incapable of discharging certain roles or functions. One aspect. Come Nishita, they are now entitled to a permanent commission. So in that permanent commission, when they are to be granted, there are two aspects that are required to be looked at by the army to grant these women the permanent commission. One is a medical and other is their ACRs. You see the past ACRs, how it has happened. Now, don't forget here that at this stage, 17 years of service or more has gone by. And ordinarily, permanent commission would come at 5 years, you will do the first, and by 10 years, you would be entitled for your second screening. And then if you were given the same treatment as your male counterparts, you would have had your permanent commission at the end of 10 years in any case, right? Unless you were so unfit on various yardsticks.
That's
But
right.
now comes the thing. Army comes out with this medical fitness thing. And it looks at your medical fitness criteria, which is shape 1, which you would have had at the 10 years of service. So at 10 years of service, these women ordinarily would be about 30, 32, 33. For them to have a shape up was no big deal. 35, you can always have a shape up. Your fitness levels are different. But when you talk about close to 20 years of service, 17 years of service, or 18 years of service, women have gone through maternity. There are hormonal changes. Your fitness levels of what you demand in your shape 1 category, a woman at 42, 44, 45 will never meet those yardsticks.
So are you saying that the requirements were the same for a
They were the
45-year-old
same,
and a
absolutely.
30-year-old woman? I see.
Yes, yes. And this is where Nishita comes from. So apart from the other things, they're not so
But
relevant.
just as a matter of curiosity, is it the same for a 45-year-old man and a 30-year-old
No,
man?
because the men were taken in at their 10th, 5th and the 10th year. So
So
they,
they were
they
basically
met
they were
with these
done with these screenings.
qualifications.
Ah,
Yes. And the thing was that you could have an injury in the course of work discharge. But if you suffered it in a course of duty, it would be counted. But if you just developed something over a period of time, it would not be taken into consideration and you would be medically unfit to go. But whereas large number of men who may have acquired certain disabilities over the period of time because they were already in permanent commission, they continue to work.
Sure.
So we created a situation here for these women that cross the goalpost first. Okay, now you're creating barriers. You may call it a systematic discrimination,
Hmm.
but you also call it as creating barriers, which is you cross this goalpost and you cross the next goalpost, and then I let you in. And
But the goalposts keep shifting. I mean,
the
you win one
goalpost
and then you
may,
see there's
may keep shifting, but the goalpost can be on the face of it. Oh, the yardstick is the same that we did for men when we took them in for a permanent commission.
sure,
So we are
sure,
not discriminating with you in any manner. We are applying
sure.
the same test. But if you apply the same test to me 20 years down the line, it doesn't
Yes.
work. It definitely doesn't work. So medical was one of the most significant one that affected women really badly because most of them would have been out. Very few of them would come up to the shape one category. And there was a need to get the court to look at this. Then there were the ACRs. Now, when women were in service, men had to definitely get permanent commission at the end of their 5 years or 10 years, whenever. Women, there was no policy now or no looking forward, women would get a permanent commission. So when the ACRs are written, they are written for men, keeping in mind that when this man will go in for his permanent commission, this will be an important factor for him to be considered at that time. So I must be careful when I write this man's ACR so that he is not disadvantaged. But for women, it was done most casually. And suddenly today, those ACRs had become significant for me
Correct.
to become permanent, get into PC. And the second thing, they wanted to consider my ACRs and my work that I had rendered only for the first 10 years,
Hmm.
but not count this duration of 17, 20, 22 years, which had been rendered by these women.
Correct. So
And
one part of it, ma'am, seems like, of course, the legal issue of discrimination, which broadly speaking is fairly simple on the face of it. But of course, this is not just a legal issue, as in it is about deep mindsets that we find in various versions of these old boys clubs that exist. Certainly,
you
the
took the
armed
word out
forces
of my
one,
mouth,
as in we
completely.
both belong to the legal fraternity, which in various countries, various shades of being old boys clubs. Of course, you are all breaking the glass ceiling, as in wonderfully. But we have seen this, that this is actually just a case of something that was decided by several men, and they take shape in this form through, as you rightly pointed out, these shifting of goalposts. So I wanted to ask you, how much of this is legal and how much of this is cultural, institutional, and if it is the latter, how much do you think the law will have an impact?
See, on the face of it, it may seem as the Union of India wanted to suggest, we are not treating them differently from the way we treated the men. Okay? So for them, it was an equality principle for both. That's how it was argued. But you have to understand, you can't treat apple and oranges alike. Number one, there are different yardsticks. I'm not saying give me concessions. Don't give these women their concession, but give them their due. So if you say that the requirement to pass this particular test is to get 60% marks or to qualify in 60% of various categories, which was applied at the time when men got into the permanent commission, it was now being suggested that the lowest ranking, lowest marks or percentage obtained by the men of your category that time after the end of 10 years will be the one that you will have to meet now.
Hmm.
So, so various goalposts were being created, they were being shifted, as you said, for women to cross now to just get their permanent commission, which the Supreme Court had now said you can get. Now, I completely agree with you. Do not forget the fact that Army did not have women until 1992-93.
Hmm.
When it had, the numbers were so small that it really didn't affect the old boys club. But now, in this group of matter, there were about 615 odd women. As I'm going by the memory, if I remember from the pleadings in Nishita, there were 600 odd women who were now coming in a permanent commission. And given the time that they had spent already, they would be entitled to lieutenant colonel or the position of colonel. And,
Right.
and there were people who were junior to them, actually in the service, who had in the meantime moved on to lieutenant colonel, who were writing their ACRs.
Sure.
So you look at the irony of the whole situation now.
That's
And
right.
second thing, at the positions at colonel, lieutenant colonel, the number of seats, vacancies are limited.
Hmm.
So now, if you're going to have 615 women take over those particular seats, those particular posts, it's even more difficult.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
But now that the Supreme Court has said it is discriminatory, what has been the follow-up? As in, has
the
now.
follow-up is quite interesting there. Um, follow-up has taken different turns in different services. Apparently, the Navy and the Air Force have been very, very progressive, and I hope so has been the Army for that matter. Navy, in fact, I spoke with some ladies and they said that they recognize now that the women are there. Women are also on board they are on the vessels also now and not just doing a job like a JAG job, similar one, but they are also on the vessels. But the Navy realized that not its vessels were not fitted out to accommodate women for their needs and their requirement. So actually, some of the naval vessels are now in the process of being fitted out to accommodate women out there,
Right.
right? But in Army, initially, the reaction was not the same. So once the permanent commissions were granted, you started seeing a different form of discrimination. Let's say that there is an officer now who is done 20 years or 24 years of service. Now in Army, you command the units. And in a unit, you may have 200 Javans, you may have 500, you may have 800, etc. So you command them as per your seniority also. The larger the unit, the senior is an officer who's commanding. So these women who were now high up in seniority, once they got their permanent commission, were given the much smaller unit and bigger units were given to their male counterparts. I do believe it's going to take a while before they iron out their so-called systemic discrimination, which on the face of it may appear to you, oh, we've given command to all, including women, but deep down it is still discriminatory. So it will be a while before that happens, but positive side, you are inducting more women in. For example, I'm told now women cadets allowed into the National Defense Academy for training from 2022. They are being inducted as Agniveers. And the Supreme Court held that you can't have, for JAG appointments, they had done some percentage, quotas. So Supreme Court said nothing doing, it's 50-50 now in the JAG appointments. So I think it will be some time before you would find that you have a level playing field and you have a workplace for women in, at least in the army, which will give them that opportunity to perform to the best of their abilities. Women,
So I'm not
despite these, have risen to a very good levels. That's what I would say,
sure. So as you said, as in it is a long journey. I mean, in the court itself, as in we've been in the Supreme Court itself, we've been there for 22 years, and then sort of the journey still seems that it's in its infancy. But do you think that a moment like
Hmm.
Operation Sindoor, where the government of India, not just the Indian Army or the Air Force, the government of India makes a powerful statement and chooses to make a powerful statement of the kind of nation we are by having Colonel Sophia Qureshi and Wing Commander Vyomika Singh, together with the Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri. It was a really powerful statement of the kind of armed forces we are and the kind of nation we are. So, do you think that this is an inflection point? That this, while there may be deep seated discrimination of the kind that you mentioned, which is not just true in the Indian armed forces, but armed forces globally. Do you think that this marks a moment where the change is not just symbolic, but the change is also meaningful? That we have more and more women in permanent commissions, whether it be in the Navy or the Air Force, which have been more proactive, but also in the Army, where some of the older prejudices seem to be still lingering on.
I think yes, it's indeed a very powerful statement to make, and it's a very positive statement to make. I would say that. I only want to say one thing there, and this is something that comes maybe on my apprehension. Don't make it a lip service. Don't make me a glamorous face. As these women have performed, they are officers. And I must tell you, earlier that before the Supreme Court, including that of Sophia Qureshi, there was a whole list of their past performance. These women had been with the UN peacekeeping forces in Congo, in other parts of the world, and they had received awards. So had Sophia Qureshi. And they were highly decorated officers even without a permanent commission. So the thing is, when women perform, they perform as well as their male counterpart. So treat them equally and not a lip service or a face service. It's very good. The message is extremely good that, our women are there as a face of this country, as the face of our forces. But when now it comes to their promotions, to come to the future career progressions, I think somewhere the mindsets will have to be changed. There must be some positive actions to make the forces realize that for many years you may have had fixed mindsets in your given environment, but now is the time to change. And
That's
how
right.
you do that is you leave it to the forces. I'm sure they know their way of doing that, but
That's right.
there is a need for that.
So we are coming close to the end of our conversation, but just going with the flow, till 1989, of course, our Supreme Court did not have any women judges till Fatima Bibi was appointed. This was
Yes,
perhaps many, maybe right towards the early part of your journey in the legal
yes,
profession. Now it's been what, if I'm doing my maths right, about 36 years since then. And in 2 years' time, we will have the first woman Chief Justice of India. So this is
yes.
happening in your
Nagaratna,
lifetime.
yes.
Yes, Justice Nagaratna. So do you think that in your lifetime you will also see a woman general of the army?
I would love to see that.
No, we would all love to see it, but do you think that
I
it
would
will happen?
say, I actually, let me say, I'm quite optimistic. Yes.
Hmm,
These women have clawed their way in. They are extremely good, right? And if you take all the way when you're going up is so tough, the tough get going. When the going is tough, the tough gets going. I would put that for these women. And I
that's right.
think they're tough enough and they will force the forces to give them the positions that they should come up.
And I think on that note, we must thank you and several other lawyers, as in who have carried on this fight for women in the courts. I think this is every little bit helps, and I think it's critical that the law plays a supporting role when these women are fighting their fight, which is really the good fight for all of us. So thank you very much for all that you're doing. And it's been a really wonderful and insightful conversation about the journey of women in the army, which of course has been given a completely new face with Sophia Qureshi and Vyomika Singh. But as you rightly pointed out, this should not be symbolic only, it should not be lip service, but it should extend to really ensuring that the armed forces are inclusive places. And where it really matters is in terms of the exam papers that are set, the criteria that are chosen, the ACRs that are written, the day to day of administration, where women have to be treated the same as men. So thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us
Thank
today and
you.
for
Thank you
that
for having me.
insight into this journey. Thank you so much.